theatre, film, TV and more. Suzy Wrong reviews it all on Joy Drive.
Good afternoon, Suzy Wrong.
Good afternoon, Warren. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. I just come back from a week in Singapore visiting my family. I spent a lot of time with two of my siblings who are decades younger than me, so they're in their 20s, and I discovered them to be really delightful. They've grown up to be really impressive, progressive, amazing feminist people. I love them so much.
I'm sure they've had you to look up to.
Well, I don't think I can take a lot of credit because I've never lived in the same country with them. Their whole lives have been away. But it was good to observe what good education can do to a person.
Suzy, I've got to ask you, in Singapore, how was the food? I always love hearing your food stories. What did you have?
Oh, it's endless. It's overkill. It's non-stop. Obviously, I feel like I'm paying for it now. I'm trying to rein things back to normal. I'm just juicing and smoothing my way through the days now to try to get back to what it used to be.
It's interesting because I was reading an article in one of the papers here. I can't remember which one, and it was about tree canopy covers in all the cities of the world, and Singapore came out on top.
You mean like trees everywhere?
Yeah, and which is true. I mean, it's so beautiful.
Yeah. The amount of green there is very, very pleasing to the eyes. And in recent years, I think the architecture has improved as well. So it's become a really pretty city. I go there once a year usually, but this year twice because it's my father's 75th. And I love returning, but I can only take it in small doses, to be honest. After a week, I feel like it's got a frantic energy that I don't love. And after a week, you do feel very kind of swept up in that kind of frenzy. And then that's when I come back and ease back into Australian life.
But it is a city that is very pleasing to the eye. Suzy, we're talking about a show on Netflix tonight that is a documentary. It's called It's All Over, the kiss that changed Spanish football. What did you think of it, Suzy?
The hashtag #MeToo movement gained real momentum internationally in 2017, effecting significant cultural change in places such as Australia, where we saw feminism take yet another big leap ahead. Just last year, in 2023, hashtag Say Acabo went similarly viral in Spain, heralding even more progress for gender equality. Say Acabo means it's all over, and that's the title of this week's film, a documentary on Netflix about the kiss that changed Spanish football. It was last August when the Spanish women's football team had against all odds took out the championship the night of the World Cup grand final in Sydney. In the midst of great excitement, especially in Spain, media attention shifted suddenly to an unconsented kiss by the president of the Royal Spanish Football Federation, Luis Rubiales, on the lips of Jenny Hermoso, a player from the winning team. The outrage and uproar were unprecedented but appropriate. The world no longer accepts disrespectful and demeaning behavior of this nature, and much as people like Rubiales wish to live in the past, the rest of us are simply not going back. The media controversy turns into concrete action, and the documentary covers the subsequent process of firing Rubiales and several of his ilk. It's All Over is a great feminist story, and for those who are interested in progressive politics, it is an uplifting film that demonstrates the power of democratic mobilization. We see Rubiales trying to downplay the incident, making all kinds of excuses that do nothing but further insult Jenny Hermoso, but he loses in the end, rightfully so. It's All Over was released on Netflix 1st November, just a few days before the Orange Menace once again won at the American presidential elections. I believe many of us are still suffering that particular aftermath, and if, like me, you find yourself these few weeks with all kinds of depressing thoughts of the so-called manosphere trying to strike back, this Netflix documentary is a great antidote and reminder that feminism works, and it just requires endless patience and persistence. Warren, some of it was really sporty, obviously, but the story developed nicely eventually, didn't it?
It did, definitely. I love how you linked it to what's gone on in the US, Suzy, and the power of banding together, because we often forget about that. I absolutely love it. Suzy, this documentary, fascinating to watch. Now, the only thing I love the outcome in the end, but I did struggle to watch it. The reason I struggled to watch it was I'm tired of watching, I suppose, men in sport and their culture. And I was watching it and I was going, oh, the whole time. It was so annoying and so frustrating that, in the end I was thinking, I've seen enough of them and their bad behaviour. It started in school for a lot of us and it continues to this day, and we can't talk about certain sports. You can't criticise them, and, they won't. It just goes on and on and on. So I did struggle in that respect. I found it quite annoying to see. I mean, some of the behaviour, like grabbing your crutch, and just honestly, stop it. It was just terrible. Just terrible.
Yeah, I agree. The first half of it is not pleasant to watch. Not only because of the bad behavior that feels so tired, but also it does have to go through kind of the process of how the women won the World Cup, which I think for you and I, it's not a particular area of interest. But when they got to the kind of the meat of the piece, it was quite captivating. And you're right to see how it was an instance of people being able to band together and kind of fight for what is right, and it just shows how these things work. They want to pull us apart. That's when they win. They always find ways to pull us apart, and I think that's what's happened in many parts of the world, including America, where people don't identify the real enemy and see each other as real enemies. It's like, they make poor people, they make the working class and middle class fight with each other while they, get away scot-free. And it's such an easy, I guess, tool for them to use, for us to turn against ourselves and then make us vote against our own interests and make us, work to kind of help them. And work against ourselves.
All based on misinformation. And that's what we saw in this documentary too, is, the excuses, the flipping it around to, blaming the girls for the behaviour and trying to force them to say it was consensual and trying to force the families as well. I mean, the effort that went in to try and iron out or let this, things settle down was just phenomenal, just to protect these people that were in these positions of power within sport. And I think that's one of the things that I was getting frustrated with was, I'm tired of sports being a little bit of a safety zone for this behaviour, an untouchable zone where we can get away with whatever we want because that's where the males all stick together and, they dominate each other and this power comes and anything that goes on the field is excusable. I'm over it. I'm sick of it, to be honest. And I know I'm speaking quite strongly. There are sports fans out there.
That's their methodology. They kind of gaslight you into thinking that, but this in the heat of the moment, it's all very exciting and anything can happen.
Oh, it's just a bit of fun.
But what happens in this case is a lot of the women players had acted in a way that was different. They came out and spoke for what's right, knowing that it was going to harm their careers.
And willing to give up their careers.
So many of them to take this step.
But how many?
It's a huge amount of sacrifice.
It is, and it was great, the outcome. But how many of women and other people in workplaces experience harassment and don't have that power to speak up and have to give up their careers and, cut off their potential because of the behaviour that's going on? It's nice. It's okay to, this did have the right outcome, but it doesn't happen everywhere.
And this had the right outcome only because they won the World Cup. So you really have to go really far. And it had happened before. A part of the story was early on, they had so much grievance about the poor performance of their coach, who was assigned out of nepotism, I guess. But they weren't able to replace the coach because they were nobodies. But once they won, in spite of the coach's weak performance, they had some level of power and some level of media attention, and then they were able to get what's right, but also, not forgetting at great cost to their careers.
I think about, I feel like, I don't know if this is a good analogy or not, but I suppose in engineering and, in physics and that, you talk about potential energy. There's this energy that builds up that is there. And I feel like, when you go through something that's negative or you're suppressed, there's a potential energy and power that does build up that we can utilise. And most of the time we probably don't, and we don't realise it. But I feel like in this documentary on Netflix, that's what happened, is they turned the situation, they harnessed that anger, that power that was there, and turned it around. And I thought that was, a pretty good lesson for all of us. We all have that power. We've just got to somehow find it.
Thank you for bringing up this idea of the pent-up energy, because I always see, people talk about mental health, and I feel like a lot of it is the pent-up energy not being expelled outside. It kind of turns inward, and then what happens is the individual suffers, and mainly because we're taught to behave that way. We're taught to kind of take the suffering, thinking that all of this is the individual's fault. Like, you haven't been able to achieve greatness, so that you are not, you don't deserve a lot of happiness, you don't have a lot of success, for example. And people kind of concede to this idea that because you are not great, you're not a winner, you're not world champion, you deserve to suffer. And in a way, this is how I think about some of my experience with mental health, and I think that is quite a nice partnership with your idea about pent-up energy.
Definitely, and talking about it, etc., or I suppose not turning into anger that harms people, but turning it into something useful is a good outcome. Suzy, I want to ask you, we were talking about Singapore before. When you were at school in Singapore, I don't know what you call it in terms of primary school and high school, but what was your relationship like with sport?
I was terrified of it. I think it was a space that I felt like the other students, in my case, the other boys, felt very open. Like, they felt like they were allowed to kind of be really demeaning to me, because I think essentially because of the way I moved my body. I don't think it wasn't like I couldn't play the sport. It was just the way I moved the body just looked absurd to them. And that's true, because I'm actually a girl, and then I just didn't move the same way that they did. And because of that, on the sporting field, that was where they felt most at ease at humiliating me. So in that way, it was tough for me. It was tough for me, and I think watching this film, I thought, wow, I really envy these women having so much passion, because they talk about the sport and they cry, they're so emotional, and I think I wish I could connect with that, and I don't have that not because I can't appreciate their achievements now, but because of all the baggage I carry from way back when.
It's interesting you say that, almost being on the field gave them license to bully you, because that's what I feel happens to a lot of us. There's something going on there that when they're all together and they're on the field, it's they throw everything at it. It's like it's okay. It's like it's sanctioned, like it's licensed. And I think of PE teachers at school that endorsed that behaviour when they should have been protecting people as well. And I wonder how much of that goes on in professional sport with coaches, etc. I don't know. I don't follow sport. I don't care about it, or I'm not interested, because
it's all part of old school masculine culture, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Suzy, I love chatting to you. I love finding out your things. I want to see the photos of your food. What are we going to be watching next week?
I will be WhatsApping you my food photos. But before we go on to next week, I just want to say that even though the film doesn't talk explicitly about lesbian women, she did come out. Jenny did come out after she became prominent because of the situation. We didn't know that she was a lesbian during the time because they weren't sort of famous, they weren't celebrities. But since she became prominent, she did come out. So I just want to say that lesbian women do a lot for human rights, do a lot for equality and justice, and this is one of these great examples. But for next week, it's going to be December, so we're looking at a festive movie streaming exclusively on Stan. It's called Nugget is Dead, a Christmas story, in which Steph must return to her small Australian hometown when the family dog falls ill. Don't worry, it's a comedy, so hopefully there'll be lots of laughs when I see you next Tuesday.
Suzy, before you go, I know you're about to hang up the phone. Kermie just messaged in saying, love how your review segments become exchanges of wisdom. I don't know if we've got wisdom. We just chat like friends, but we're certainly not qualified to give relationship advice or anything like that. But I love our chats. Thank you, Kermie.
Definitely not relationship advice, but for other things, yes, maybe.
Suzy, before you go, you picked a song. Tell us about the song that you picked to play after this.
My favorite band is Pet Shop Boys, and they recorded a song called Bullet for Narcissus, which came out on their album this year called Nonetheless, and it's about a crazy person who's a fan for a dictator. Probably American, but who knows? So this song is Bullet for Narcissus by Pet Shop Boys.
Thanks, Suzy. Catch you next time.